The war started without warning. From peaceful skies above the galactic temples, the first strike came like thunder from the stars. The monument world of Zorelia, where ancient relics stood untouched for ages, was suddenly caught in a chaos no one expected. Orbiting trade stations fell silent. Defense satellites blinked out. And at the heart of it all stood the one thing no species dared to disturb, a massive alien statue with eyes closed and arms outstretched like it had waited for something across centuries. The aliens called her the Watcher. She wasn't built by any known race. No one knew her origin. Some said she was a goddess turned to stone. Others believed she was a weapon sleeping in disguise. But all agreed on one thing: never touch her. Over thousands of years, hundreds of empires had passed by that world, leaving offerings and prayers, but not even war had made them violate that rule until the warships came. Until everything burned. Even the mighty monument was caught in fire. And smoke, still standing, still silent, most species ran. Some tried to defend the relic planet, but their efforts fell like leaves in fire. The attackers, unknown and cold, seemed to want nothing but destruction. They bombed temples, they erased cities. But they avoided the statue. Even they feared it. And that's when the human arrived. Not a soldier, not a scientist, just a lone man in worn gear and an old shuttle that barely made it through orbit. His name was Commander Rex Callan, retired Earth Marine. He wasn't sent by any government. He came because of a signal. Something old, something deep. Something that didn't speak in language but in instinct. He'd felt it in dreams and heard it in the low hum of space itself. It called him here. He landed where smoke still rose from alien soil. Dead ships lay, broken across craters. Cracked walls whispered stories of those who had tried to stand and failed. And there she was, the statue, untouched, towering higher than any skyscraper back home. Her skin shimmered with faint green light even under thick clouds. Her eyes still closed, her lips still calm. Rex walked forward with no armor, no weapon, just curiosity and a strange weight in his chest. Alien drones, watching from orbit, recorded everything. They sent warning signals to their commanders. The human approaches the Watcher, the AI monitors transmitted. Across 10 different systems, alien leaders watched in disbelief. This planet was marked as sacred. Death penalties were set for violating it. But the human didn't stop. He climbed the cracked stairs leading to her feet. He stood before her, looking up at the giant calm face, and he raised his hand. Inside command halls across the galaxy, council members rose to their feet. Some screamed. Some cursed. "He's touching it," one voice gasped. "Stop him," cried another. But they were too far, too late. Rex pressed his palm gently on the surface of the monument's foot. It was cold, then it was warm. Then it was alive, the ground shook. A soft wind moved through the ruins. And the statue's eyes opened. The entire galaxy held its breath. Drones buzzed in static confusion. Attackers paused their fire as if feeling something unseen. Even the signal that had brought Rex here grew stronger, filling the air with a pulse only he could hear. The statue turned its head slowly, looking down at the man who dared to break the rule, and then she spoke. Not in words, not in sound, but in thought that entered every mind nearby. "You have awakened me," the voice echoed inside all thinking creatures. "Who are you to reach where none have reached in ages?" Rex felt his knees weaken, but he stood firm. "I'm just human," he said softly. "But I'm not afraid of the past anymore." Suddenly, energy surged from the statue's body. Broken machines nearby lit up. Dead trees grew new leaves. Crashed ships lifted slightly from the dust. It was as if her power had always waited for a key. And the key was human touch. From across space, thousands of eyes watched history change. And none could explain why it had to be a man from Earth. The war paused. The silence was heavy. But not even the silence could hide what was happening now. A human had touched the untouchable. And the alien goddess had answered. The statue moved with grace no machine could copy. Her joints didn't grind like stone, yet her skin still looked sculpted and smooth. Energy rolled off her like waves touching every broken thing around her. Rex took a step back, but not from fear. He stepped back to see her better. The monument was alive, and her eyes were locked on him like he was the answer to a question. Asked long ago, alien species across the galaxy panicked. Emergency meetings were called in orbiting councils and secret bunkers. No protocol existed for this. The monument was supposed to be dead or divine, never active. Yet a human had touched it, and now it breathed. Some accused humanity of planting the statue to gain power. Others argued it had waited all along for someone like him. But none could deny what their drones and satellites had recorded. The statue knelt slowly, dust rising around her as ancient pressure left the cracked stone below. Her massive hand stretched toward Rex, not to grab, but to offer. He stared at it, heart pounding. He felt no threat, only weight like destiny itself that opened its palm and told him to step inside. He climbed onto it, and the moment his boots met her skin, she stood again, lifting him toward the sky. She whispered without speaking. Thoughts echoed inside his mind. You are not like the others. You did not come to worship or fear. You came because you felt me call. Rex nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand, but he knew one thing: he hadn't come by chance. Since the signal reached him on that lonely outpost, he hadn't been able to sleep. Something had told him to come. Something had pulled him here like gravity. The statue turned toward the ruins. As she walked, the ground beneath her repaired itself. Walls lifted from rubble. Trees regrew where craters once were. She passed a shattered alien temple, and the shattered ceiling reformed in her wake. Around the planet, strange signals lit up. Old systems turned on. Data streams began flowing from long-dead towers. Every corner of the world began to wake like it had only been sleeping. On orbiting vessels, alien leaders watched with wide eyes. "We must stop this," shouted a Warnathi admiral. "It's Earth's weapon," screamed a Royal Arkan ambassador. But one voice cut through the fear. Elder Yiltal of the Drenari Council leaned forward and said, "That thing has slept for 1,000 generations. None of us could wake it. The human has done what we feared and failed to do." No one could argue with the truth. Back on the surface, Rex stood atop the statue's shoulder as she climbed a long mountain path. He saw the world from above, from ancient cliffs that had not been touched by feet for eons. A large gate appeared, half buried under time and dust. The statue pointed toward it. "Only one who woke me may enter. The path has been sealed from fear, but it must now open through courage." Rex didn't hesitate. He walked to the gate. His hand pressed the center where alien symbols glowed faintly. The stone dissolved like mist, revealing a tunnel lit with green light. Inside were walls covered in strange carvings, scenes of planets, wars, and beings with glowing eyes. He followed the path until he stood in a chamber with a pedestal at the center. On it lay a glowing sphere pulsing like a heartbeat. The statue's voice returned in his mind. "You must choose. If you lift the heart, I will awaken the others. I was only one. My sisters sleep in worlds across stars. Together we can restore what was lost, or we can bring down what does not deserve to rise." Rex stared at the heart. He knew what she meant. The galactic powers that ruled now had brought only fear. They had bombed, conquered, and silenced weaker worlds. They feared anything they could not control. He reached for the sphere. His fingers touched its surface, and warmth filled his chest. Outside, the sky changed. Stars flickered with purpose. Across the galaxy, statues in forgotten lands began to tremble. The Watchers were waking. And it had started with one man who chose not to fear what others avoided. The planet of Zorelia lit up with symbols that had not glowed in 1,000 years. Drones tried to interfere. Some fired from orbit, but their beams were absorbed by energy shields rising from the ground. The statue raised her hand, and lightning crashed from the sky, disabling weapons without killing. She was not made for war, but for protection. Rex felt his body grow lighter. Symbols glowed on his arms. The heart had changed him too. He was now bonded to something beyond human understanding, and the galaxy had just begun to realize what that meant. Asterisk, the skies above Zorelia turned blue for the first time in centuries, not from weather, but from power. Old storms that once cloaked the planet in lightning cleared like curtains pulled back from the stage. The statue stood still again, her eyes closed, but her presence stretched through the ground. Cities buried under stone cracked open. Temples forgotten by time reformed. Everything old returned with new breath because a human had dared to believe. Rex stood on a high tower rebuilt by the monument's light. From that height, he could see ships landing, alien ships. Observers, military scouts, scientists, they had all arrived. Not to honor the awakening, but to contain it. They didn't understand what was happening. All they saw was a threat. Rex clenched his fists. He knew how this would go. They'd try to control her. Or worse, destroy her. He had to act before they moved. A message appeared on the sky, a projection broadcasted by the Drenari Council. It showed Rex's face with a warning label in 10 galactic languages. Do not engage. Dangerous influence. Human interference. In sacred structures. He laughed bitterly. The same ones who ignored the monument now called him dangerous. Not because he was violent, but because he had awakened something they couldn't control. That fear was spreading faster than he could. Stop it, he returned to the statue. She opened her eyes the moment he stepped near. They come not to learn, but to silence, she said calmly. Rex nodded. What do we do? The statue slowly lifted her hand, pointing toward the sky. You must protect the gateway. I will prepare the others. If we fall here, none of them will wake. He didn't ask who the others were. He already knew. Across the stars, the Watchers were stirring. With no army, no fleet, and no allies, Rex began preparing. He didn't need guns. He needed understanding. Using the knowledge inside the chamber, he accessed blueprints and histories left behind by the ancients. He called out across human channels. Only a few answered. Engineers, explorers, people like him, those who fixed things, not broke them. They arrived on drop pods carrying tools, courage, and curiosity instead of weapons. The other species didn't wait. A fleet descended within hours. Massive capital ships hovered above Zorelia. Their cannons charged, warning shots fired into mountains. Return the monument to sleep, demanded the Wernithi general. Rex replied over open frequency. You had your chance. You abandoned her. Now she chooses us. Silence followed. Then came an order that chilled the air. Eliminate the human and contain the structure. They didn't realize the structure was no longer just stone. The statue didn't flinch. As ships fired, a field of energy spread like a dome. Beams bent away. Explosions became harmless sparks. I will not harm them, she told Rex, but I will not let them harm you. Her voice rang through the minds of every soldier, every commander, every leader listening. I am not a weapon. I am memory. I am balance. If you fear me, it is because you fear what you've forgotten to be. The monument grew, not in size but in purpose. Her form shimmered with ancient runes. Roots of energy dove deep into the planets. Core, spreading power through crust and soil. The world bloomed. Life returned to deserts. Water carved paths through dry land. Zorelia was not just awakening, it was healing. And still, the galactic forces kept coming. Not to stop destruction, but to stop change. Rex moved fast. He guided human engineers to connect old relay towers to the Watcher's core. He placed signal amplifiers in caves glowing with alien crystal. When completed, a pulse raced across space. A soundless call to every dormant statue on faraway planets. One by one, systems blinked on. The Watchers stirred. Whole continents shifted as ancient giants opened their eyes. The age of silence was ending. Panic spread through the stars. Leaders held secret meetings. What if the humans are chosen on every world, they asked? What if they're not awakening weapons, but judges? Fear turned to rage. Orders were signed. Elite troops were sent. Not diplomats, assassins. They didn't want peace. They wanted to erase what they couldn't dominate. But the monuments were not sleeping anymore. And Rex was not alone now. The statue touched his chest gently. "You were never meant to carry this alone," she whispered. His eyes glowed with the same light running through her arms. She was not giving him power. She was showing him he had always held it. He just never knew. The Watchers didn't pick him because he was human. They picked him because he dared to walk where others trembled. That choice echoed across galaxies, and now the stars were listening. Rex stood before the glowing core as the last of the human engineers finished tuning the uplink. They were tired, covered in dust, and surrounded by ancient machinery they didn't fully understand. But they worked like they had done it 100 times before. Something about this place gave them strength. It wasn't just tech. It was purpose. Each piece they touched came to life with warmth and color, like the world itself was helping them. Above the monument, stars flickered strangely. The orbiting enemy ships had begun moving again. Troop pods detached from cruisers, heading straight toward the surface. Inside each pod were elite units from multiple species. They carried weapons designed to suppress psionic fields, nullify ancient tech, and kill anything that moved. The Drenari generals weren't taking any more chances. They wanted Rex gone, and they wanted the monument sealed again, forever. The statue opened her hand, and a ripple passed through the air. From it rose shields made of living light. Nada Kandi. Single soldier on Rex's side knew how it worked, but none of them questioned it. They trusted her. They trusted Rex. The human had touched something sacred. Something that centuries of science and war had failed to reach. The aliens thought brute force would undo it, but this wasn't a system built on fear. Rex didn't command like a general. He led like a builder. He ran across platforms, helping with connections. He recalibrated energy cores and showed new arrivals how to ground the relays properly. Every time he touched a wire or moved a piece of crystal into place, the structure hummed louder. The monument was responding not just to his commands, but to his intention. It recognized something true in his spirit. By mid-cycle, more Watchers were responding. On distant worlds, similar statues awakened and glowed with familiar light. Not all of them chose humans. Some chose forgotten species, ancient tribes, and even outcasts. But something was clear now: humanity had reignited the chain. The monuments were not tools of war. They were guardians, meant to protect life from the mistakes of power-hungry empires. Inside the chamber, a console rose from the floor. Symbols swirled into patterns no one could read at first. But Rex stepped forward and the symbol shifted. Into Earth language. "Final key accepted," it said. The monument began vibrating slowly. Then the voice of the statue returned. "They are coming to destroy the balance. You must now decide, Rex of Earth. Will you protect this world, or will you run?" Rex didn't blink. "We'll protect it." The floor beneath them pulsed, and ancient machines activated deeper underground. Walls split open to reveal dormant constructs machines, made not for destruction, but defense. Shields, energy weavers, planetary repair drones. Everything needed to restore, not ruin. The monument wasn't preparing for war. It was preparing to survive one. And Rex was now its living conduit. The alien drop pods landed just outside the field of light. Dozens of armored troops poured out, weapons raised. They hesitated only a moment before charging. The humans didn't retreat. They braced themselves beside the glowing conduits, ready to defend the Watcher with bare hands if needed. But then something unexpected happened. The first trooper crossed the threshold and fell to his knees, clutching his head. He screamed. Not in pain, but confusion. "She's speaking inside me." He shouted. Others followed. They too dropped their weapons, overwhelmed by visions. The monument didn't attack them. It showed them something. Memories of their homeworlds before war. Moments of peace before greed. Generations that once danced under stars instead of commanding fleets. The soldiers began to cry. Some screamed. Some simply sat down, stunned. One commander fired a missile. Out of rage. The moment it crossed the monument's light, it dissolved. Not exploded, disintegrated into harmless particles. "This is not your battlefield," the statue said aloud, her voice carrying across the land and into orbit. "This is remembrance, and those who come in hate will forget their own names." Her voice wasn't a threat. It was a promise. In orbit, Drenari High Command watched in silence. They didn't understand what was happening. Their best troops were paralyzed. Their weapons failed. Their data corrupted. But what frightened them most was the reports from across the galaxy, other monuments. Now active, now choosing, now healing. The empire built on control was collapsing, and all of it had started with one human's touch. Rex didn't celebrate. He stood quiet near the heart of the monument, watching as engineers continued their work and enemy soldiers laid down their arms. The light pulsed around him gently, like a heartbeat. It wasn't over. He could feel that in his bones. This was just the beginning of something much bigger. Something he might not live to see. But he had no regrets. He had touched the past and found a future. And now the galaxy had to decide whether to follow or to faw. Across the galaxy, monuments once thought to be lifeless relics began to wake. They shimmered with light that traveled through space like whispers. Whole planets that had forgotten their ancient ties felt a sudden pull in their bones. The Watchers had returned. But unlike the myths, they didn't bring wrath or judgment. They brought choice. And at the center of it all stood one human who had dared to touch what none would. Rex sat at the base of the monument, his fingers lightly resting on the glowing platform. It didn't feel like power. It felt like connection. Every pulse that ran through the stone was like a memory of something older than time. He didn't know how he understood it, but he did. Maybe the monument wasn't teaching him. Maybe it was remembering through him. That's what scared the Empire the most. Drenari High Command ordered a full blackout. They shut down comms, burned records, and executed any officer who reported monument sympathy. They weren't fighting a rebellion now. They were fighting truth, and truth spread like fire when left unattended. Soldiers began abandoning posts. Engineers started whispering about Earth. Civilians painted murals of Rex on their homes. The Empire's greatest enemy had become its greatest idea. The girl from the research station, Vera, stood beside Rex again. Her eyes, once filled with skepticism, now held awe. "Why you?" she asked quietly. He smiled but had no answer. Vera wasn't the only one asking. Across thousands of systems, people wondered why the monument accepted a human. Why not a philosopher? A scientist? A ruler? The answer was simple. He had touched it not to take, but to understand. The Watcher revealed its second phase. Blue energy shot into the sky and formed an orbiting ring of data symbols, maps, warnings. Vera called out readings. "This isn't defense. This is history," and it was. The ring showed the collapse of older empires, the rise of the monument. Builders, and the mistake that broke them apart. Greed. Unity had failed before. And now they were trying one last time. Suddenly, from the edge of the atmosphere, a new fleet appeared. Black ships with no markings, no life signs. These were not Drenari ships. They were older, buried weapons systems from a time when the galaxy was still wild. Machines left behind to prevent the monuments from ever returning. They had sensed the reactivation and awoke with one goal: destroy the source. The final trial had begun. The monument's lights dimmed for the first time. Vera panicked. Is it shutting down? Rex stood. No, it's testing us. The core began pulling power inward. The constructs around them formed a protective dome, not just to shield them, but to challenge them. Rex realized the Watcher didn't want to be saved. It wanted to know if this time someone would fight not to control it, but to protect it. All across the monument, humans and aliens worked together. No one gave orders. They moved by trust and rhythm. Engineers rerouted shield capacitors. Scouts calculated trajectory intercepts. Even some of the former Drenari soldiers who had surrendered earlier now stood beside the humans. The statue had shown them something too powerful to ignore. Hope. It was no longer about war. It was about memory. The black ships began firing. Silent blasts cracked against the outer dome, causing shockwaves through the ground. But the shield held, barely. Rex reached the core and placed both hands on it. It burned like ice, then calmed like water. The Watcher's voice returned, softer this time. Your kind was never chosen. You stepped forward when others stayed behind. That is why this galaxy may yet heal. Above them, the sky split. The old machines unleashed a final weapon. A sun-cracking blast aimed straight at the monument. Everyone braced. The shield wasn't enough this time. Rex looked at Vera. It's okay, he whispered. He didn't try to run. He stayed with his hands on the monument. And as the blast struck, the monument didn't block it. It absorbed it, twisted it, and returned it as light. That light didn't destroy the enemy ships. It changed them. Circuits melted and reformed. Engines stopped hating life and started learning. The ships blinked with new colors and turned back into the stars like curious animals. The galaxy saw it through broadcasts. Billions of beings across worlds watched as ancient death became living beauty. The Watchers had given their answer through Rex's choice. When the light faded, the ground was silent. The monument pulsed, calmly, steady and warm. Around Rex stood hundreds of beings, no longer enemies, just witnesses. Vera knelt beside him. You did it, she whispered, but Rex shook his head. We did it. For the first time in known history, an empire didn't fall by war, but by awakening. And the one who had sparked it all was just a human who reached out and touched what others feared. Asterisk. The monument had stopped glowing, but its presence had not faded. It stood tall and silent, like a guardian that had seen enough. Around it, the crowd of aliens and humans stood together in stunned silence. There was no cheering, no celebration, just understanding. Something deep had changed in the galaxy. Not because of a weapon, not because of a war, but because one human had dared to touch what everyone else feared. News spread across systems faster than light. Some said the human had unlocked a god. Others believed he was a chosen one. But those who were there knew better. Rex wasn't special in the way myths described. He was kind. He was curious. He was willing to die for truth. That was what the monument responded to. Not power, not blood, but humility. The Drenari Empire collapsed within weeks. Its governors abandoned their posts. Armies refused to fight. Propaganda stations stopped broadcasting. The name Rex became more powerful than any royal crest. But he didn't return to Earth or take a throne. He stayed by the monument, repairing systems, guiding visitors, and speaking with alien scholars who once doubted humanity's worth. He didn't lead by order. He led by example. Vera remained by his side, documenting the changes. She recorded the messages etched into the walls, translated the history displayed in light, and shared the teachings with peaceful worlds. Her reports became sacred texts in some cultures, but even she never claimed ownership of what happened. It belongs to all of us, she said. Because one of us finally acted without fear, new statues began to rise across the stars. Inspired by the ancient monument, these new structures weren't meant to be worshipped but remembered. Each one had a handprint at its base, a human-sized one, and beside it, a simple plaque in every known language, touch not to command, but to understand. It was a message the galaxy was ready for, one that turned fear into hope, but not everyone embraced the change. A few dark factions believed the monument was a trap. They formed secret fleets and whispered of vengeance. One such group attempted to destroy the monument at night, hoping to end the symbol before it spread further. Rex faced them with no army, only words. "You fear change because it means you must let go," he said calmly. They lowered their weapons without a fight. The monument glowed again that night, not as a warning, but as a sign. It pulsed gently, casting light into the sky. Like a heartbeat, a new message formed across its surface. Vera read it aloud for everyone gathered. Peace does not demand silence. It invites voice. All species are welcome to speak so long as they do not shout alone. It was a call for unity. Not forced, but chosen. In the following months, peace councils were formed. Old enemies met not as diplomats, but as learners. They didn't always agree, but they listened. Humans became known as the Bridge Walkers, a nickname earned not from strength, but for stepping where others hesitated. That was the legacy. Rex had left, not conquest, not dominance, but courage in the quietest form. Rex sat beneath the monument one last time. He had grown older, not in years, but in weight. The burden of change was heavy. He looked at Vera. "Do you think it worked?" She smiled and handed him a small metal sculpture, an alien child's carving of the monument, with two hands touching. "It's side by side. It already has," she replied. He nodded, finally at peace. One morning, without warning, the monument shimmered and then vanished. No damage, no smoke. Just gone. In its place was only a ring of soft grass in a smooth circle of stone. Where the handprint had once been, a new symbol appeared, the spiral of coexistence. The galaxy mourned the loss but celebrated the meaning. The monument had given what it needed to, and left before it became a shrine. Rex and Vera disappeared. After that, some said they became stardust. Others claimed they found another monument on the edge of a dying system. No one really knew. But everywhere across the stars, statues stood tall with open palms, welcoming all who dared to approach with open hearts. Children touched them without fear. Elders sat beside them and told stories. And always they remembered the first human, who touched what none dared, because in a galaxy ruled by fear, one human's simple act of reaching out had awakened something greater than any empire ever could. Asterisk.